Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here. It's been beautiful weather in Happy Valley. I know the rain on Saturday was not ideal, but every other day it's been just absolutely banger weather for fall. And game day, you got to be ready for it. Academy Sports and Outdoors. You're a local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. Shop online at academy.com to find grills, canopies, jerseys, and more. They'll get you ready for game day. There's another great one coming up this weekend, and then another one after that at the end of September, so plenty of opportunities to tailgate with the Nittany Lions. The game, that's what we're here to talk about today. We have Nate Bauer and Sean Fitz, veteran reporters of Penn State football here at Blue White Illustrated, here to discuss, dissect, and offer their insight into everything from what James Franklin had to say to what we saw on the football field. So, gentlemen, good morning. Nate, how are you doing today? You're off to a hot start here in the, on the internet on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah. If I can, I just want to go back to Saturday. And give major props to the guy who was running the checkpoint, the security, entering Beaver Stadium. I walked from my home through the rain to Beaver Stadium, got to the gate, and the first gentleman I encountered said, "Sir, you need to take that umbrella back to your car or put it in our trash can." And I said, "That's not happening. Neither of those options are what I am going to do." And thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. I was allowed to sneak my way in to Beaver Stadium with my umbrella, and it was never seen again, but I remain in possession of my umbrella. So thank you, guy at the gate.
Publicly flaunting the rules and then telling people about it.
That's what I do.
There's nothing more Nate Bauer than that. Fitz, welcome to the show. Were you also smuggling contraband into the stadium?
Not that I'm aware of. They didn't really check me all that closely, but I didn't have an umbrella. By the way, he was still all wet when he got there. It was either rain or sweat. We couldn't decipher that.
Both.
But
both.
Yeah, you looked like you walked uphill both ways.
So let's just get this off the start. Eastern Iowa in the chat has been banging on this drum all day. For the record, I called 37-0. Wasn't a cupcake. I'll be accepting apologies. I'm just going to leave this up here for 5 minutes as a there you go. I hope this satisfies you, Eastern Iowa. Our residential realist, I want to say. I don't want to call somebody. Yeah, I know, Fitz, but to not then double down on this. Just gonna call him what he wants to be called, which is a realist here. 34-0, 37-0, pretty close there in terms of what the final score was. I do want to ask this to start the show, though. So let's just. I do want to ask our question of the day, and then we'll get into our recap of the game. Who is having the best start to the season for Penn State football? Which player do you think is having the best start to the season for the Nittany Lions? You can leave that, reply to the video or leave that in the live chat here, and we'll give our thoughts a little bit later once we get into our breakdowns, recaps, and previews. But the question for you today in the chat is, who's having the best start to the season for the Nittany Lions? Because I assure you, we're going to be talking about the guys who didn't have the best start to the season so far for the Nittany Lions, because it's always interesting to talk about those things, the conflict, the drama, the reality TV show of football over the good stuff. Nobody wants to hear about the good stuff because otherwise you just scroll through Twitter and see the highlights. So Penn State, FIU. We're going to start with the offense and then we're going to go to the defense. So Nate, just give me your high-level recap thoughts of the game and the offense and what we saw from the Nittany Lions on Saturday.
On offense?
That is yes.
Oh, boy. I mean, you just don't want to start with the good, do you? You want to get me right down that path. Look.
Right now we have 56 minutes left in the show, so we want to use as much of this as possible.
A lot of long
were they sharp? No, I think that's fair. Look, the way that the final score played out, I think in some ways overshadowed the fact that it was a 13-0 game with 20 minutes of football left to play, right? Against a team that Penn State was favored. Look, you would think that Penn State offensively given the context of the preseason, given the context of the conversations that were had about this team, the offense and how it was trigonometry, right? While Jim Knowles was installing Algebra 2, based on the timelines, that the trigonometry side would be just sharper, right? Just sharper execution. And it was not, right? The running game, Nick Singleton didn't have a great day, missed some opportunities. Katron out, right? Like they were not able to maintain possession of the football and string together long drives, right? A couple of fourth downs that came up short, third and short that came up short. So they had opportunities, but Drew wasn't sharp. And James Franklin talked about it on Monday. It was a little bit of a snowball effect of, you start with that one bad shot in my world of golf, but you start with that one and you just let it compound. And so as a quarterback, I think there were some easy throws that he missed early in the game, some drops early in the game that just didn't allow Penn State to offensively get into the flow they would have expected to have.
Off the top for you, Fitz, what were your reactions to Penn State's two halves of football? I think is pretty fair to the way to characterize that from the offense.
Yeah, definitely. I think really trying to do too much in the first half and actually trying to do too much over the first 2 weeks. Like, I think they try to do too much altogether, but in the first 2 weeks, it's been magnified. Like, they've been doing stuff that they believe that they're not good at to test themselves, and they haven't passed all the tests. And you look at the second half and you look at the difference between, going east-west, doing the outside zone, all that stuff. And then they go back to when the game is closer, and, unfortunately for them, it should not have been closer. They went back to what they actually do well. And you kind of saw the grind opened up. You kind of saw some more lanes for especially Katron Allen, I thought played really, really well. So I think they need to narrow that focus as they ramp up to Oregon. But I think a lot of it's by design. A lot of it's putting themselves in position, doing things that they're not good at. It's almost putting them in a position to fail, to test them to see if they can pass it. Yeah. And I'm convinced we're not going to see a lot of this stuff against Oregon, because a lot of the stuff is unnecessary against Oregon. You're taking different shots. You're taking different, especially in the run game, you're taking different shots. And I think that's notable for the first couple of weeks. So first half to second half, big difference with the efficiency and just trying to not trying to do what Ohio State did to Grambling last week, because I think Penn State could have run for more yards against FIU over the weekend. But I really think that they continue to do the things that we thought they were going to do, which is handle these as scrimmages, as building activities, and they have not passed all the tests. And I think that's the frustrating part. And on top of that, Drew, hit and miss. I mean, I think goes without saying, but we have to say it.
So I do want to stay there for a second. When we kind of agree, and we've talked about this, of working on things like the passing game or certain aspects of plays or formations, whatever it might be, there is this opinion that it's FIU, and if you try it, it should work. So I guess, how do you feel then about the team from where you started at the beginning of the season through these two tests now, about where specifically the offense here? How do you feel then about their outlook, Nate, if they're trying to do these things and they're not succeeding at them, that it's not going, perfectly well, or however you might want to phrase that? So how do you view then the result of that?
I think that there's an interesting tightrope that they're walking. And I'm thinking this out live, so if I'm wrong, just laugh me off the stage. But they want to establish things for future opponents to have to worry about. And in the process, they're showing that they don't do those things well and eliminating them from the things that future opponents need to worry about, right? Because now future opponents could say, hey, well, look, if Drew Allerkamp and his receivers, right, who are still getting in this acclimation period, if there's a world we live in where in our minds, everyone who's really good or highly rated or respected, right, these preseason candidate, whatever, Heisman contender, like are good at everything. They're not. He's not. One of the things he doesn't seem to be particularly adept at is some of the things that they've worked on, right? So yes,
right.
The easy passes out of the gate, I think, have been a problem that has been established throughout his career. But specifically, some of the deep passes and some of the things that they have gone to early this season that have not been sharp have kind of always not been sharp.
So I guess that is kind of coming out of this. That would be my concern coming out of the FIU game. My post-game analysis, the analysis I did over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com of what was the game plan, what were they trying to work on. So if they're not just trying to win the game, what are they trying to work on? And there is a blueprint for how you stop the Penn State offense, and it's been the same way since 2023, which is they've got a new quarterback at that time. Stack the box and make them beat you deep. So Penn State, you could say, did not have the resources at receiver to consistently beat players deep. Now they went out and invested in that, Fitz, and we're still having the conversation about if you can play cover 3 and drop a player into underneath coverage, and I want to say underneath coverage because it's not just about stacking the box against the run. It's also about stopping the short game, which Aller is good at. So now, to Nate's point, if you put it on tape to Oregon that they're not going to be ultra successful at the deep ball if you give them single coverage on the outside, is that not informing the future game plan, or do you think there's still more for them to do and develop in this situation? More that maybe they weren't working on different aspects of the deep game within the last 2 weeks that they still can use later?
Yeah, I mean, number one, do they have a deep guy? Like, is Devontae Ross, who made a fantastic catch for the touchdown this week, is he like a true deep guy? Like, I know I don't think Omari Evans was a good receiver, but he was a fast guy that could get past the defense. I don't know that Penn State has that, and I think that that's number one. Number two, Drew's deep ball, not a strength at all. And I think that they call that game around their strengths, and that's not a strength. He doesn't go down the field. So I think there is something to that. And I also think there's something to Penn State hasn't used the middle of the field a ton. And I'm curious what that means in terms of, I mean, you think about last year in the playoff run, I mean, Penn State's most effective play was that little angle route by Nick Singleton across the middle. You know, you've got options across the middle that you're not utilizing right now. And I think that, number one, I think that's one way to get Nick Singleton going is to do something along those lines, is to get him out as a receiver. But you're not using part of the field, and you're using a lot of the timing stuff. You're using a lot of, hey, get these guys on the same page, get Drew Aller in a rhythm. And it just hasn't really set themselves up for success. They're finding themselves in a lot of third and mid. I think they had 5 3rd and 4 and less, and then went 1 for 5 this week. I mean, third down is a huge issue right now, because even if you're doing things that you're not completely comfortable with, as the superior team, you need to pick up those third downs, or at least a large chunk of those third downs. So I think that's something that's worrisome. And I see it in the chat here, and I was going to get to it. The QB run is something that was not part of the game at all this week. If you look at the 4th and 2 to Katron, that is one that needs to be kept. And there was no semblance of pretending that Drew was going to keep that on the offense or the defensive side. I mean, that was a straight crash on Katron, and it was pretty well blocked, actually. Like that is how this stuff is working. If you can't account for the second level with some of the combo blocks and things like that, but also if you can't, how do you say?
If you're leaving a guy intentionally unblocked on the backside because that's the key to the play,
right? And
then you let that guy go to the point of attack because there's another option, but you never use the other option, then you're just running a bad play. Is, I guess, not bad in terms of, like, that's it. That's not an effective strategy. You would want to block that guy if you just have no intention of ever keeping the ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a straight handoff. You might as well go under center at that point. You know, that's what I'm looking at. So, I think that there are adjustments to be made, and I think just looking at the way that they called the game, it was very disjointed in a way that, like, sometimes the offense looks disjointed, but I think sometimes the play calling looked that this week. And I think, again, you don't want to hear it, but some of that's by design, to put them in spots that they're going to have to win by I don't want to say flawless execution, because you never get flawless execution, but you're going to have to win by doing everything right. And that doesn't always happen, because the guy across from you is not going to be in the same space twice. So I think that's what you get to. I mean, again, we looked at it all weekend. You looked at it this weekend. The offensive line better than you're going to give them credit for, because that's just the general sense of how this all goes. You watch it live, you think these guys suck, and it's not really the case. I think a lot of the blocking was actually pretty good on Saturday. Yeah. They still struggle to get to the combo and the get off to the second level, and that's what hurt them on Saturday. Was the second level of FIU's defense, led by number 0, who was pretty damn good player. They really that is where they hurt them the most. And I think there was a question earlier in the chat about when you don't go live, which James Franklin said yesterday, when you don't go live, you don't finish guys. That I think that's going to wear off on the combo blocks as well, because you don't always have the same kind of feel blocking with a guy on your shoulder and then peeling off and getting the second level. And I think that's where, if you're going to point out errors at Penn State with Penn State's offensive line, and they've got room to grow, absolutely. I think that's where it comes from.
Nate, you had something you wanted to share there about a minute ago. So do you remember what it was? If not, no. I need you to tell us about Antifragile. So just tell me about Antifragile Brewing Company, because we have some awesome people that support the show, and we want to make sure that people know about them.
Yeah, we actually, Fitz and I took a jaunt down there to our favorite little place on East Calder Way. Best beer in State College, truly. And I mean, like, this is hand up personal experience. Very nice time. I had a great Friday afternoon, thanks to Antifragile. Hazy IPAs, imperial stouts, all the beers, right? Lagers, whatever, right? They've got a lot of stuff happening. Constantly rotating menu of beers, and so you literally every time you step into the place, you have an opportunity to try something new that they've brewed up, and like, again, genuinely speaking, it is never bad. Like, it's always good. So yeah. Great cheesesteaks out front at Uncle's John John's, which also, by the way, has a food truck as you're going into Beaver Stadium. Check them out remotely, right? If you get an opportunity going into the stadium there in front of the Brace Short
They were just by the tailgate show. They were just a couple steps down from the tailgate show. So you can do a 2-for-1 when you're coming to Villanova next weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And 3:30 game, right?
Yep.
Am I right? Yeah. See how much my mind is on this one. But yeah, plenty of time. 3:30 game means plenty of time to take advantage of all that is to offer at Antifragile.
Nate, I view this as a 1-0 philosophy, where you don't need to know the time of the game until you need to know the time of the game, and that is not yet, because we are still talking about the FIU game. Now, of course, this show is also brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here. Nobody gets you ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find grills, canopies, jerseys, and more. They can't get you Antifragile, but they can get you all the things to make your beer cold and keep you out of the rain if there is more rain in the forecast, which we're not even manifesting that. It's going to be perfect this weekend. Be a watch party legend with gear from brands like Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour, at undefeated prices every day. Be sure to check out Harrisburg and York locations if you're here in Pennsylvania. But of course, this is a countrywide, international show. So wherever you are, check to see if you have a local Academy Sports and Outdoors. Fun can't lose, and neither can you with tailgate gear from Academy. Of course, if you want to get the full analysis that we did this weekend, I broke down every single play, or damn near every single play, from Penn State football on Sunday with our film review. These guys gave their first impressions, their thoughts on what James Franklin had to say after the game. You can subscribe to Blue White Illustrated right now for $1 for your first week. As a bonus, your membership includes a complimentary year of The Athletic, so that's pretty cool. I want to follow up on something you said, Nate, and Fitz, to your point about the offensive line was better this week, and they didn't really get credit for it. Here's one reason why. Where did I put that note? Here we go. 19 runs to the outside this week. So Penn State, as I can understand it, saw a schematic weakness within FIU and their style of play and the way their defensive ends crash on the run schemes. Like, they want to keep their edge defenders tight to the tackle. They don't try to... Anyway, too much information there. So what Penn State tried to do is run to the outside, because that's, in a certain area, what Bethune-Cookman was able to do. And Penn State was actually churning like 5 yards a carry, 6 yards a carry in these situations. So when we talk about the offensive line this week, there was a lot of aspects of they had some important blocks, but maybe not the starring role that they might have previously. Now, in those times that they did, some of their concepts were defeated by the front. So FIU, as James Franklin talked about last week before the game, runs a multiple defense with odd fronts and even fronts, meaning 3-down linemen or 4-down linemen. And that's important because certain schemes are better against one front over another. And if you're constantly bouncing between the two, and in the second quarter, I think FIU threw a wrench at everything and pivoted to an odd man front for most of that second quarter, and Penn State was still trying to work some of these concepts. That caused some of the grinding to a halt because you can still run whatever you want against any front, and there are ways to defeat it. It's just harder. Right. So Penn State wasn't putting their superior athletes in the best possible position. Some of that may be by design, some of that to work on stuff, as we've talked about that. Some of that might be FIU was just doing hard things where, as an example, the difference between a 4-down front and a 3-down front, the way they run it, is the middle of your nose. You line up right here if you're the defensive tackle. That's an odd man front. What if you line up right here? And for people looking at the podcast, my hand is like right next to my face. Is that technically that's a one technique. That is a 4-down defensive alignment, right? Unless the rest of the guys aren't lined up like that. So they really were blurring the line between how do I block this for the offensive lineman? And so there are some schematic things you should give them credit for. Now, did they go out and maul everybody the way that they should have, being 330-pound Division I, top of the top athletes? Maybe not. But the offensive line, I think, did a good job overall. The stars, though, for me, Fitz, were the tight ends and the receivers blocking out in space. That was a very strong performance from those guys. Any other parts of the offense you guys want to discuss before we move on and talk about the defense? Have we gotten into the deep ball part yet?
No, I remember the thing that I wanted to say.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
I off the top of my head, I counted 3 times, and it may have been 4 last week, where Franklin brought up his displeasure with the shots that Drew was taking in the running game.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was
so I wonder if that,
yeah.
Like, I wonder, this is me. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he doesn't want Drew Aller to get hurt
it's a fair open
this time
question
of the year.
Right? I mean, this is the unknown of what are the coaching points within what they're doing, where we didn't see Drew Aller take the ball and run with it until big games last year. And they found other players to do that particular job in the offense. Now, that's the thing, is we haven't seen other players other than the Wildcat, and we haven't seen Drew run the football. So are they saving that? I think that's a fair, open question as to whether or not they're doing that.
Concept, right? It's not saving the concept. It's not. It's like, I mean, some of this stuff is like has been screamed from the mountaintop for basically 2 months, right? Like, frankly, and I sent you all those texts on Sunday, T. Frank, to the point where you wanted to kill me. But like, this has been a repetitive thing, right? Win the game, get through it healthy, develop depth, work on the deep ball, right? Like Drew letting it rip, all that stuff. I don't know. I don't think that, sometimes there's conspiracy theories, right, where we have to work through the layers and get to the meaning. To me, a lot of what's happened so far is right at the top, which is these are the things that they're working on. Here's why they're working on them. And also, importantly, they're not good at some of these things. That's why they want to work on them, because they're actually not good. That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Let's talk about the deep ball. We're not going to get to this in between the lines. We asked about this yesterday in James Franklin's press conference of, I think fans are visibly and audibly frustrated with the way Drew Aller throws deep balls for a guy who's 6'5" and has one of the strongest arms to come through Penn State in 10, 15 years, that he consistently underthrows his deep ball. Last year we had this conversation about Aller and this, coaching point that Franklin during that explanation said you would rather have it be underthrown than overthrown because an overthrow gets you 0 yards and underthrow gets you a personal foul opportunity, a pass interference opportunity, or a jump ball situation. So I guess like that's the meat of it. Fits coaching, execution, and then everything in between seems to be what people on the internet are arguing about. So how do you read the situation of starting with you'd rather have it, you would ideally have it be a perfect ball, or if you're going to guess under a little bit?
Guessing is so tough here because it's just missing, right? I mean, but I think that's probably the detriment here is if you miss short is counteractive to chuck it deep, right? I enjoyed Christian's chuck it even deeper thing.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's it. And I think a lot of it, goes back to footwork. You look at the throw that he made to Devontae Ross in the end zone, and it looks completely different than the throw that he made to Devontae Ross where he got the pass interference. Now the pass interference, a positive play. An overthrow there. How many yards is that? If it's an overthrow, 0. So,
and they're on the 10 or whatever they were. They were backed up by their own goal line at that point too.
Right. But and I think that's the thing though. Like I see someone says it's a weak philosophy. The philosophy is not to underthrow it, right? It's if you miss, be short. But yeah, I do think that has stuck in his mind, and I think that is a problem because you just don't see him air it out. But there's a heavy in between there that's like they're not telling him to throw it short, and that's tough because I like to miss the outside. That's my preference. I think that's I think you're just kind of running in circles there saying, well, why doesn't he throw it longer? Well, he needs to throw it shorter. They're not telling him to throw it shorter. And I think that's kind of I think it's more lost in communication with the wrong words than it is like this guy is being instructed to throw it for the pass interference instead of the completion. So I think that's not the case, right?
It's like the depth chart conversation if you just ignore the or next to a football player. Like, actually, no, it's nothing like that. Sorry. It is one thing. Yeah, it's sometimes
the complete opposite of what I said. Yes,
the complete opposite of what I thought for a half second. I'm like, nope. I threw that ball too short. Is what happened there. Is I was under aiming for my target. The point is to hit the player in stride for a touchdown. That is always the point. These coaches and players are pursuing perfection, but it's the philosophy of it. How are you going to throw that ball? And Fitz, to your point, the first one that he threw, and this is going to get to, and I'm going to break my own rule of, I'm talking about something I want to talk about in the future here on the show. He's obviously overthinking that first ball. The way, the loft, the trajectory, the delicacy. He's trying to place the ball into Devontae Ross's hands. He's trying to hand it off through the air. Right. As opposed to the second one where he just chucked it deep. He just chucked it deep on that second one. And he got a touchdown because it was on frame and on target. Was it perfectly led all the way down the field? No, it was not a precise ball where he could catch it out here, outstretched, out from where the defensive back could get it, but he gave his receiver a legitimate chance to catch the football. Okay. We spend 30 minutes on this. We need to talk about the defense, and this is an area where I think we learned more than we did week 1 because there were some more tests and different types of tests for the defense. So the first thing, though, Fitz, coming back to you, players playing was important this week to you.
Yes, players playing is a good thing. Players playing well is a good thing. And guys that, hey, look, the conversation is going to be the same with Zariah Fisher. Every time we talk about him, it's always, I don't want to say a risk, but we're always going to talk about the injury. He's not going to shake the injury-plagued label. It is what it is. But you kind of saw what he was, right? That's a guy that can come in there and be consistent and play against the run and also provide a little bit of pop. Like he showed a guy that really, really wanted to get back out there and make some moves. And I was really impressed with Zariah Fisher and talked to some guys after the game, and they were also happy to have him out there. I mean, it's such a lift, right? When you take a guy who has gone through so much, does it help with the particular pass rush move that you're going to throw. Not really, but it's such a lift to everyone just to have him out there. And Chaz Coleman is amazing. Like, he is a shiny object that is one of the shinier objects that we've seen. He is fantastic, and I love watching him. But also, he is still a freshman. He's still going to have to continue to get better, and he will, which is the fun part, obviously. It's kind of like Abdul a couple of years ago. You just kind of saw it, and you're like, oh, man, when this guy figures it out, and he's productive without figuring it out, that's great.
Yeah.
But you see the down stuff with Zariah Fisher, and against a team like Oregon, I think they're really going to need him. So you rotate those guys through and get your reps now. I think they said that they probably played Zariah more than they wanted to, but the fact that he's out there, the fact that he was not really slowed by all that stuff, I think is a tremendous step for that entire group, tackles included.
Nate, what did you think about the defensive performance? What were your impressions of how they played? By the way, in a shutout on that side of the ball, when we were talking about the interesting things to talk about, and the offense scores 34 points, but 14 of them come late, and the defense gives up 0 points, I can't imagine it was anything but a good day for that side of the ball.
I take this strange delight in the natural reflex of everyone right now is praising the defense, and James Franklin's comments about the defense yesterday were about how mad Jim Knowles is, right? That it's like, yeah, it's fine, but he'd love it to be a better operation, and they're thinking too much, right? Versus the offensive conversation, which externally is, oh, this is a complete Hindenburg. What a disaster. Whereas publicly, it's like, hey, this is okay. It's all right. I actually thought FIU had some good players on the offensive side of the ball. I thought the running back was okay. I thought the quarterback was pretty good. And so, they gave up some yards in that first half. I did think that Willie Simmons probably going to get overlooked here, but should have gone for it on 4th and 4 at the 46-ish in the third quarter. That was they punted, and the ensuing possession was Penn State's 3-play, 80-yard drive, whatever that was, the 30-yard pass to Pena, and then the touchdown. But yeah, I think there was maybe a little bit more success there for FIU than is being acknowledged. Giving the circumstances.
I mean, you look at where FIU was pretty successful the other day is short yardage, and especially like 3rd and 4th down short yardage. They got Penn State moving around a little bit, through the ball to the perimeter, and you have to read and react, and Penn State's still struggling to read and react in a certain part of the defense. I think the second level could have been better last week. I thought Tony was fine. I thought Amari Campbell, he got caught up in that traffic like we thought he might at that size, and trying to run around it. Like I think he can do that in the ACC some. Probably can't do it as much in this defense. So you're looking at that. You're looking at them developing safety rotations. Like, it was very interesting to look at the snap count, because Antoine Belge-Shorter played a ton against Nevada, and he dialed it back. And then you got a bunch of Dejon Lane, you got a bunch of King Mack who did some nice things out there. So I think there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of churning, and there's a lot of testing the communication. I think makes sense, but pretty good outcome. Again, the short yardage stuff is very interesting to me, because it's not like they're getting beat with I think there was one run up the middle, but it's not like they're getting beat up the middle. It's about the stuff on the perimeter. And I think that's really where you see this defense not playing as fast as it is capable of. And I think they'll get there. It's just a matter of, like, you've got to work out some stuff. And credit Willie Simmons, he gave them a lot of stuff to work on. And I think that's pretty fun. I do agree with Nate that he should have gone for it if he was going to go for the win, but that's neither here nor there. Can I jump in on that? Lot going on there, because there's a lot of stuff that I think doesn't show up because of what Penn State was doing. So we talked about this as a heavy RPO offense, and they only threw a couple of RPO passes, specifically because those linebackers were being used to prevent some of those. It was preventative maintenance, right? So it's like going to the gym so you don't get a week back. Like, they were putting those guys in position to take away the stuff they knew what was coming. There was one particular play that I saw last week when watching them against Bethune-Cookman, where they would run a particular run play, and normally a tight end just blocks on that play, but they would have him block and then run an RPO route out of
the opposite way of where the linebackers should be going. So if you pull this way, the linebackers follow, and then they bring the tight end across the opposite way late, in the RPO way. And so there was a lag in how the linebackers were reacting, and I think some people are saying the linebackers don't have instincts, so they're reacting slowly. This is a read and react defense. This, as James Franklin talked about yesterday, it is not them throwing stinging linebacker bodies at the gap. They have to see where the play is going and then go to that location. Right. And so I think that there is a little bit of we've got to adjust our eyes from what we saw from Manny Diaz and Tom Allen to what this defense is, which is a traditional style from a linebacker perspective. And then when you add on what FIU was doing, what they were taking away that we didn't even see, you have some of that. And then Amari Campbell getting lost in the sauce is, you thought maybe that was just a UNC thing, and it turns out that might be a little bit of a personality of Amari Campbell going the opposite direction to where the play is going because he thinks he sees something. Right. So I think that there's some, again, as you guys mentioned, FIU did some things schematically that could challenge Penn State, and those things did show up, in 4 or 5 yard gains that allowed them to play small ball, which that's a team that doesn't want to play small ball. And so fundamentally, I think Penn State's defense did their job where, Fitz, we haven't seen anybody challenge the secondary, really. The corners, we haven't seen it.
Yeah, they played keep away for the first 2 weeks. And, I think it shows up in the interceptions column, which is one of my favorite things that's ever happened in Penn State football with the defensive tackles. Xavier Gilliam, I don't know if there's odds on Xavier Gilliam getting a pick this week, but maybe that's it. But no, it's been really interesting because, you're right. And that's I'm going to use the word worry because it's not, I don't think there's anything else to say, but they haven't been tested on the outside. Harris, Collins, Washington, those guys, and they will in a couple of weeks. So there's tough ways to it's tough to simulate that again when the other guy's not doing it, and you just kind of think, okay, well, where does this come from? And honestly, looking at this defense, looking at what we've seen through the first 2 weeks, and hey, that's the other thing, that this is just the first 2 weeks. The big picture is not here yet. They're going to need more from the nickel. And Zion Tracy coming back from that injury, didn't play a ton, but also looked like a guy who was coming back from injury. And Kenny Woosley's been targeted in the first couple of weeks, and I think his size has really shown up, and his relative inexperience. So they're going to need more out of that nickel spot. I'll be very curious to see where, number one, Zion is going into that Oregon game, and number two, do you move a guy around? Do you play Davian Collins in the slot? Do you move, AJ Harris around? I'm very curious to see if he's ready to go by Oregon from a full capacity. This is the best version of this defense, or something like that with the nickel spot, because the nickel spot has been the one spot that's been kind of targeted, and they've been successful with it.
I'm going to call a bit of an audible here, and we're going to go to what we want to see here in week 3, because we're deep into the show, and Between the Lines is usually a very meaty segment, so we'll end with that. So before we get into that, week 3, Nate, what do you want to see this week, either in the game or in practice or in conversation with Penn State officials and players? What are you looking for this week from the Nittany Lions?
Honestly, I don't know, and I think that's the point for me. Is are they gonna do what they've been doing? Right? Again, they're broadcasting what their strategy is, the checklist, the laundry list of things that they want to accomplish in the preseason. Well, Villanova's another preseason game, and then they have a bye. So are they going to keep with that, or do adjustments need to be made to maybe feel better about yourself, right, as a team? I thought the question yesterday about the temperature of how they feel, how players feel through 2 games was appropriate and pretty well answered by Franklin, that it's not a glowing place to be right now, right? At Penn State, in that locker room, they know that they've come up short in some areas. They know that they haven't executed necessarily to their potential in a bunch of different areas for a bunch of different guys, including guys who have the highest expectations in the world for this season, right? I mean, look, there is a reality to this that I think is not part of the conversation, but should be, which is this is stat padding season.
Yep.
Right? Some of these guys came back. They made the decision to come back to Penn State to improve their draft stock. That was universal. Yes. outside, the conversation shifted to winning a national championship, and that is absolutely part of it. But another big part of it, almost equally as much, is they thought they would get a draft evaluation of this, and they all came back because they wanted it to be that, right?
Yep.
They want it to become that. Well, who has done that at this point, right? Of that group.
Yeah, just Nittany at this point, I would say. Nittany put in a good performance early in the season.
Maybe Katron, right? Katron has looked good enough to from what he was at the end of last season or the season that he had last year. I think now his stock is probably up after a couple of games. But outside of that, I think it's fair to say that there's probably some level of frustration across the board for a lot of these guys that, hey, it has not played out the way that they necessarily would anticipate, where in both veins of personal performance, individual performance, and also for the team, right? You expect to have a 40-point lead at the half, or some of these guys expect to have a 40-point lead at the half, and those are the things that haven't happened yet.
350 yards passing, 150 yards rushing, all of those, as you mentioned, stat padding. Nate, you are so good at setting us up. Unfortunately, I still got to get Fitz's thoughts. So Fitz, see if you can set us up for Between the Lines even better. But you've got some great points here I wanted to make sure we got to on the show about what you're looking for this week.
Yeah, I think it's a transition week for the offense. Like, you look at how much they've tried to do, and it's so tough because it's a hated in-state rival, Villanova. But it's an FCS team that you should be able to do a lot with. And hey, we've seen Penn State in this situation before, and they did not handle Villanova very well in 2021, I believe it was. So like, there's been options like this before. Now, it's so different when you don't play, and no disrespect intended, you don't play anybody in the out of conference. It's not something that we've really seen before, because they've approached this in a situation where, hey, we want to get our work in, which is usually counteractive to the 1-0 mentality that they do, and I think that's where the frustration comes from fans, is watching them practice. And we go to practice every week, and we we make snarky comments about how we didn't really see anything. I think that's kind of bleeding over into the games right now. You're not really seeing a ton of what the offense is going to look like against Oregon. And I'm not saying, and I said this in my impressions, I'm not saying they're hiding anything for Oregon. It's like, this is not a situation where it's like, hey, they're holding out this play to catch them off guard. Oregon knows what they're going to do. Oregon knows this identity. Football playbooks are not very different. Penn State's playbook is not very different than Oregon's. Like, this is different formation. Like, the thing that they're doing right now is they're in a different formation every play. They're in a different personnel group every play. They're running guys in and out. They're running tight ends, 3 tight ends in and out for 3 receivers. Like, they're doing all these things to sort of make them chart more stuff. And I think it's not a cop out to say they're putting more on film, but they're putting a lot of data out there that they're not going to use. I feel when it gets tightened up, the rotations are going to go down. The playbook is going to scale down. You're probably looking at a playbook that's 200% of what they need. This is something that is very different than what we look at. So when you're looking at Villanova coming in, do you see the second half mentality? Do you see the Ohio State against Grambling personality, where you just go out and you just try to execute? That's a bad mess up. Execute your stuff and, end up with the points. That is a big difference from what we've seen. So I'm very curious to see where the transition happens. Is it transitioning against Villanova to run the stuff that you're actually going to run, or is it another of what we've seen in the first 2 weeks? Is it more of that? And I think that's a very good question. And I don't know the answer, because it is Villanova and because they still want to play a lot of guys.
Yeah, and I think that last part of they still want to get people on the field is going to muddy some of that in terms of how they present this stuff, even if it is change. And that's luckily what we're going to talk about after next week's game, of what we see on the field and how all of it charts. But before we get to that, we need to get to what James Franklin had to say this week between the lines. Was that a dizzying transition there, Fitz?
A little bit.
They have both gotten reps with runs.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of these, but to hear James Franklin talk about these aspects out loud, I think is important. So let's start with his post-game press conference talking about why the offense maybe isn't putting up as many points as possible.
We've gone into these first couple weeks with a philosophy of things we were trying to get done in terms of building chemistry and confidence in certain aspects of the game, rather than just go do what we got to do to win games and score points. So I think that those things could factor in to a degree, and that really kind of revolves around those three receivers. But yeah, we need to be more balanced. We need to be more explosive on offense.
So the balance to that is Mech Engineer here does not want to hear anyone's excuse about anything. That still doesn't excuse poor performance. He's very clear about that in the chat of they need to still, if they're going to work on something, it needs to work. So Nate, balance of this in your mind of, and I know we've talked around this, but specifically, if you're coming into a game and you're not interested in putting up as many points as possible, what's your assessment of how that's been going and what you think the fruit of that labor has been?
I struggle. I have this intense struggle with, if Penn State was winning games 70-0 right now, the only conversation would be screaming that they don't play anybody, so it didn't mean anything, right? That True. you haven't gotten better at anything because you've just run it down their throats and you've just been the more dominant team, right? So like you can't have it both ways. And to me, the only thing that I'm seeing and hearing is like negativity, but I'm convinced very strongly that it would be existing no matter what they did. Right? Sure. Because if they weren't playing a ton of guys, if they ran the ones out there and did a very the tighter rotations, as Fitz said, if they went out there and played the way or went into these games with the same philosophy they're going to have for Oregon and threw out their best stuff, right? Everybody would be saying, why would you waste it? Why would you do that? You've lost this opportunity to get better from your depth. You've lost this opportunity to work on the things that you're not good at. So I just, you can't win. And that's okay, right? That's kind of the beauty of this conversation, and none of it matters, right? All of this, like, this is just talk. That's all we're doing. That's all anybody else is doing. And it's okay. But the reality is none of us are going to know what's coming until September 27th. That's it.
Can I offer a theory to you, Fitz, and then you can tell me what you think about it? So in this particular game, Penn State's working on stuff. And Nate asked me, like, hey, does this actually track in terms of what you've seen? And my answer is yes. Week 1, they worked on getting the ball to the receivers, efficiency of the passing game, connection between the top guys, Kyron Hudson, just getting completions, making the offense flow through the passing game specifically. And that worked. This week, the plan was big plays, deep shots with Drew Aller. James Franklin talked about being more explosive, so they start running to the outside. Gave you the stats about that. They start the chuck it deep conversation. Literally the first throw that Aller threw deep to Javonte Ross was a one-read play. He had one wide receiver running a double move, running a go, and then there was like a check down if he needed it. But there was no other option but to throw the ball deep. Then we find out later Drew's overthinking stuff. So I know that the overthinking part is about the short throws that he missed early. But to me, it's the game plan was, okay, all systems go, Drew. We're throwing it deep. And then we get this from James Franklin.
So I think I had a conversation with Nick yesterday, and I think a little bit like Drew. I think he was thinking too much, and I think he's getting coached in some areas that I think are going to be important for his growth, and I see him getting better. But for all these guys, we're going to coach the heck out of them Sunday through Friday. Saturday, when you wake up, just go play. And I think he's trying to play perfect. I think he's such a good kid, and he's so coachable. He's trying to do all the things that are asked from him. But again, that's not what Saturdays are for. Saturdays, just go play. Let it rip.
So to me, the game plan was to feature those two guys and their most explosive elements, and they wanted to be so perfect that they ended up coming out pretty tight. Does that track to you, Fitz?
Yes, sorry. There's a really loud jet going by, so I had to mute myself. Yeah, I think so, and I think that there was an element of, I don't want to say late. You called it lethargic, right? The other day after the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like everything about that day reflected the way that they played, the weather, the crowd, themselves. Like I think that was it, and I think you see a lot of that when you start thinking and being hard on yourself for the for the little things. James mentioned the throw to Nick, awful stuff, and he knows it's awful, but like, do you let that linger? It's like if you're if you're a shooter in basketball and you miss a couple of your first shots and you shut it down, you're not helping anybody, especially yourself. So keep going after it. And I think that that's really what you've got to turn. And again, I didn't like the body language from Drew. And some of that is the iPads on the sideline. I'm not gonna lie. Like you like somebody said something about Danny and Drew sitting there looking like dazed. Well, they got an iPad right in front of them. They're watching an iPad. I got an 11-year-old who does the exact same thing. Like, you're watching intently as to what's going on there. And I think that may have been misread a little bit, but at the same time, there's still stuff that needs to be done in terms of body language, in terms of leadership, in terms of, putting the team on your back and doing something as opposed to just waiting for it to come to you. So I think that there's definitely criticism warranted in there. And I think that, he's the guy that everybody says he is. You expect that from him, right? You expect a jump from him. You expect him to step into that throw and make that throw like he made to Ross, which actually the throw that I liked was the one to Reynolds that ended up getting reviewed for some reason, which was one of the worst reviews I've ever seen in my life. But that's a great throw, and he almost walloused it, last year against Ohio State. And I think that that's really what I'm looking at, is how do you bounce back and make those kind of throws, especially in down and distance situations that need to be on point. It is short-term memory. Nate mentioned golf. It's been destroying me lately, just letting things bleed over. I'm not a good golfer to begin with, and when I get frustrated, I'm even worse, right, Nate? Exactly. So like it's that kind of short-term memory. I think that's the biggest thing with Drew right now, is to I missed that one. Yeah, I'll get it next time. And that's not, we're not seeing that right now.
And by the way, that is a hard skill to learn. Like, there is, I don't want to say you're either born with it or not, because you can't, like, I believe anyone can improve if they decide they want to get better at something. But I've also been somebody who mistakes stay with me and they bother me and I learn from them. But in the moment, that is not a fun place to be. And if you've got to, at the next play, go out there and make a play, that can be, that is a hard, especially if you have high standards for yourself. And I think this is the thing that the chat is hot, right? About, like, Drew Aller, how dare he have this quirk about his personality. Dude cares. Like, I don't know how to tell you, but like he has a higher standard for himself than you do. And this is an effect of that. Now, that is obviously still getting you to the same place. Nate, what are we laughing at?
Well, sorry. Go ahead, Nate.
Well, I mean, look at his career, right? When he was a sophomore, he never talked, and everybody was really upset about that, right? Now he's got bad body language. Why does he have bad body language? Because to everyone else that's watching, we're not on the sidelines. And the only reference point a lot of us have are Disney movies. This isn't Remember the Titans, right? Nobody cares. Nobody on that sideline cares. Vega Ioane is not like, oh man, I doubt myself now because Drew's really mad. Nobody cares on that sideline. And sometimes, right, like it's a give and take. I'm sure that there are things that he would have wanted to do or express himself about as a sophomore that he held in reserve because that wasn't his place. Well, now he's a senior. He gets to do what he wants. You guys, it does not matter what you think of him, right? It is what how his teammates respond to him, how he carries himself with his teammates. Like, it's just noise. It doesn't matter. I'm done.
I forgot where we like that. That was up here. Go for it.
Yeah, my issue with Drew is he's treating his performance like the people following the show, like the people on the internet are treating his performance like it's that one bad throw, and it's muddying the whole thing. and the throw to the side. I mean, that was awful. Like we said, it can't say it enough. It was not good. But you're letting that cloud the entire day. And for the internet people, whatever. That is what it is. That's about being a fan on the internet. For a quarterback, that's a warning sign. Like that is alarming. So he's got to have to get over that. No, I mean it is. Like
he's gonna have bad games.
He is.
So
all
is,
quarterbacks have bad games.
It's about I'm not talking about the full game. Like I'm talking about letting one throw bleed over into 3 throws. Like that is,
and that happened.
You talk about stacking days. It's about stacking streaks. And hey, he hit 7 of 8 coming out in the second half last week. Like that's pretty good, right?
Can we talk about that? And that is, I think, a really important part of this conversation when we talk about Drew Aller and good Drew, bad Drew. We talked about he's had bad days. He has missed the easy throws. He'll overthink, like all those things, all those parts of his personality. That used to be like a whole game. This game, it was the first half. And then there was a reset in the third quarter where they gave him some of those rhythm throws to the tight end, running Hank into the flat so he can just pick between 2 receivers, throw it easy, completion, move the chains. That got him back on rhythm to then take a deep shot and get a touchdown. So as much as there is he was not good in the first half, that paints our whole picture of the day he had. Plus, and Nate, I've talked about this before, this is also set up by football players and coaches are their own worst enemy. They are going to tell you that it's never good enough because internally that's how you raise your standard every single day. That's how you 1% better. That's how you want to know, is that you can never be satisfied with your own performance. And then everyone else goes, oh, it's carte blanche for me to say that nothing you've done is good enough. In the second half, I broke down a bunch of these plays where Drew Aller, the quarterback, pre-snap and post-snap, got them critical first downs, 4th down conversions in the third quarter and in the 2-minute drive because he's better at quarterback than he was as a freshman. But people just see an easy throw to Luke Reynolds that suddenly is a first down, and then they go and they get in a field goal position and they kick a field goal. The subtle stuff is very good. The obvious stuff is obviously a struggle. And we're not having a complete conversation about Drew Aller because of the nuance there, because the obvious things are the most apparent in his performance from Saturday. I do think it's interesting that, from a play calling perspective, Fitz, he kind of needs that. He kind of needs that rhythm throw to get him into the flow, where before it was game plan, lock in, let's throw deep, and he's not ready for that. And then you got to kind of work him into the game.
He loves the slot hitch. I mean, that is his throw. That is the one. I know we talk about the 15-yard out, which he can make, which not many people in college football can make, but the slot hitch is what gets him into his rhythm. And also when you've got, and this is probably something we will continue to talk about because it's only been 2 weeks, but I don't want to say everything changed, but a lot of things changed when Trevor Pena slipped a tackle and ran 20 more yards.
Yep.
That is something we haven't seen for a long time, and that makes a difference. That opens some things up. That maybe pulls a safety back a little bit. So I think that's the stuff that we want to continue to see from those guys on the outside, is to, sort of not just be the guy that's in position to create separation, catch the ball, and then get knocked out of bounds. Pena did some yak stuff. Luke Reynolds.
Yep.
Boy, that guy's really good. He was able to do some stuff, caught it short of the sticks and made some first downs. Those are the things that you're looking to sort of blossom in this offense. And you're right. It's not just about the one guy.
Nate, we're not going to get to our final thing here in between the lines because we also talked about it of the defense. I just wanted something to balance out having a 60-minute conversation about the offense. Do you have any final thoughts here about the game and today's show and your thoughts about our conversations today?
Yeah, they need more of the things that Fitz was just talking about with the receivers. But you did see it, right? Reynolds, I think that was a third down, maybe his first catch, where he kind of stopped and started and picked up an extra 4 yards to get them a first down. And then if you look at the two, I think it was a 4-play drive, but the touchdown in the third quarter was a play by Pena to make the catch, but that was all yak, right? That was a 8-yard catch that went for 30.
It was just another speed out that they had thrown all game, and then suddenly he breaks a tackle on it and then gets 30 yards.
It was the Parker Washington touchdown against Ohio State a couple years ago, where he just it was nothing special, but he made something happen. And
the Ross catch as well. I do think that Franklin's point about getting them all happening at the same time is important. Like I was a little surprised because I was going to come back with this earlier in the show, but like PFF's receiving ratings for everybody are bad for the first like they're average for the first two games. And I would assume it's a matter of ups and downs, right? A little bit of a roller coaster for those guys.
So a lot of what they've been doing is they have been completing the play that's there for them and not generating more or less or doing something more or less difficult than what you would expect of them. So if they make a small mistake, then it's a slight downgrade without much of a positive. So if you catch a 10-yard speed out and that gets you a first down, that's expected. So that's not going to get you a positive grade necessarily, if that makes sense. And a lot of that was a lot of what Nevada was just thrown underneath the coverage for first down. And
also the way that we're consuming it is we're breaking down the plays that didn't work so that, in theory, you want to see them fixed. But sometimes, that's all we're seeing is the stuff that doesn't work. And then the stuff that does work is just kind of like, oh, this is really good. Move on. That's tape breakdown for players and coaches and things like that. I understand that you make the corrections first, but there's a lot more good than I think everyone's giving credit for. It's all about the negativity right now. So.
Fitz, that's a good place to leave it, probably.
I thought that was a pretty good send off there. And then, what do you got? What else you got? We got a commitment from Tavion Branch that we put up a video. T. Frank put up a video on Sunday. Check that out. It happened during the game, so nobody. It's like that and Friday evening at like 9:00 are like the two worst times to commit from a reach perspective. And we got one of those this weekend. But Tavion Branch gives Penn State a third defensive tackle commitment in the class of 2026. Good in-state pickup, good athletic player. Definitely check that out on the page. And again, subscribe, do all the things that we would like you to do to help us continue to bring this to the show.
All right, we're going to be back tomorrow with more from BWI Live, and we're going to discuss all the aspects of the game from an X's and O's perspective and maybe give you a preview of Villanova. Going to be working on that today. So I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll be back with more BWI Live, and for some reason my sound controls are all disabled. So see ya.